The independent centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron has decisively won the French presidential elections. He won by 66.06% to 33.94%, defeating the far-right candidate Marine Le Pen. The 39-year-old former investment banker will become France's youngest leader since Napoleon and has promised to transcend outdated left-right divisions. However, in order to implement his policies, Macron's immediate challenge will be to secure a majority in next month's parliamentary election for his party. Now, shortly after the victory in his first speech, Macron said that he will unite a torn France and will renew ties between Europe and France's citizens.
Je défendrai l'Europe, la communauté de destin que se sont donnés les peuples de notre continent. C'est notre civilisation qui est en jeu, notre manière de vivre, d'être libre, de porter nos valeurs, nos entreprises communes et nos espoirs. J'œuvrerai à retisser le lien entre l'Europe et les peuples qui la forment, entre l'Europe et les citoyens. Je dis à tous que la France sera au premier rang de la lutte contre le terrorisme sur son sol, aussi bien que dans l'action internationale. Aussi longtemps que ce combat devra durer, nous le mènerons sans faiblir.
Macron's rival, far-right leader Marine Le Pen conceded defeat shortly after the first projections were published. Shortly after congratulating Macron, she called upon all right-wing forces to join her in constituting a new political force.
Les Français ont choisi un nouveau président de la République et ont voté pour la continuité. Le premier tour a entériné une décomposition majeure de la vie politique française par l'élimination des partis anciens. Ce second tour organise une recomposition politique de grande ampleur autour du clivage entre les patriotes et les mondialistes.
Joining us on the phone line for more on that story is my colleague WION's Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Palki, obviously, this is a big victory for Macron, but how big a test does he face as far as that securing of a majority in Parliament goes?
Well, it is a tough task ahead, and for all those people who've said that this win has, which it certainly has, bucked the global tide of anti-establishment populism, the fact is also this, that more than 35% of people in France have voted for Marine Le Pen, so she has doubled her.
All right, we seem to have lost...
divided France that he's inherited.
Right, Palki, we lost your audio for a bit in the middle. I'll come back to you in just a second. Just take our viewers through some of the sort of congratulatory notes that have been coming in for Mr. Macron since his victory. Now, world leaders have, of course, taken to Twitter, including the Indian Prime Minister, who congratulated Macron, saying that he hoped to work with him to further strengthen India-France ties. Meanwhile, the US President Donald Trump has also congratulated him on winning the French presidency and added that he was looking forward to working with him. Now, the British Prime Minister Theresa May, in a tweet from her spokesperson, also warmly congratulated Macron on his victory. European leaders have hailed Macron's victory as a vote for European unity. Let's go back to my colleague Palki Sharma Upadhyay for more. Palki, obviously India has been watching this election quite closely. What does this portend for India and France's relationship, having a Macron take over the reins, so to speak, from François Hollande?
Well, Macron is the polar opposite of Marine Le Pen. He is a pro-globalization leader. So European countries and the world at large is heaving a sigh of relief because this means more inclusion. He is an ex-investment banker, a former economy minister. He's an advocate of free markets and pro-diversity. So to that extent, it's good for India. Marine Le Pen staunchly had a French-first anti-globalization policy. So it's easier, I understand, for India, Indian companies, and in tourists. To that extent, India will be looking at this positively. Donald Trump was seen as someone who is similar to Marine Le Pen. He too has congratulated her. So this has been an extremely divisive election, as we've been saying, and Marine Le Pen's loss here augurs well for all those leaders. We saw in the Netherlands just last month the man who was called the Donald Trump of Netherlands losing that election, and so that tide is slowly turning, if I may use that phrase. And in that sense, this is going to be a good move for the rest of the world. But as you said, the challenges remain for Macron. He faces some difficult elections and some difficult steps ahead. For him to be able to implement all the things that he promised,
Right.
He's going to have to work very hard. And there is almost a quarter of the French population which is a first-time voter, so he has to go out and impress them and say that he has a plan in place for national security, which remains a very, very sensitive issue in France.
Absolutely. Palki, thanks very much for joining us with those updates this morning. We will, of course, continue to track everything as far as the French presidential election goes. As Palki mentioned, this has been a rather divisive fight with the two candidates out there openly going at one another. But we also spoke with François Gauthier. He's a French political writer a short while back. Let's listen in to what he had to say about the result.
At least the first 6 months is going to have France behind him. Even Mrs. Le Pen was gracious enough to accept defeat. So I think he's going to have a lot of support. But the fact is that he needs to win the next legislative election because his party is very new. It's neither left nor right. So in the next elections, he needs to have a majority in the French parliament so that he can rule in a more efficient manner. There isn't a strong French, economical presence in India, and we French people who love India, we would like it to be much more. The French have sympathy for India, but that sympathy is not followed by a real economical and political investment in this country, which is so important. I mean, of course, India is not doing as well as China yet, but it's more democratic, it's more Western loving, people here are more liberal, So the French needs to make a huge effort towards India, which they haven't. We do hope that Mr. Macron, though he's a bit ignorant about India, like many French political leaders, will make this effort.
Staying with that story, stock markets in Asia broadly rose as trade kicked off for the week after Macron's victory in the French presidential elections. Japan's Nikkei rose by 1.8% in early trade. This is the highest level since mid-December last year. Now, according to experts, investors had largely factored in the decisive victory by the market-friendly Macron against his far-right rival Marine Le Pen. Markets let out a collective sigh of relief at the absence of a Brexit-style political upset. Now, reports say that soon after his victory, Macron spoke to the British Prime Minister Theresa May and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. This is, of course, the big story we're tracking here on WION. Remember, it had been an out-and-out fight between Marine Le Pen of the right movement, the populist movement, anti-European Union, pro-Frexit, pro the establishment of France First for all jobs, versus the far more liberal Emmanuel Macron. In fact, our bureau chief in London, Mandy Clark, sent us this report on the French presidential elections. Take a look.
Well, it was quite interesting because the mood amongst voters yesterday in Paris was one of apprehension. There wasn't an overwhelming confidence in Mr. Macron, but quite hesitation about what he will bring. Everyone I spoke to did say they were going to vote for him, but not because they were fired up about him as a president, but more they simply did not want Madame Le Pen to be their president. They felt that she didn't represent their views and she would cause a lot of chaos in France, where he represented stability. Though he is not from one of the traditional parties, they weren't 100% sure of his platform. He's an untested politician in the political landscape, in the arena, on the world stage, and they didn't really know how he would fare. And so there was kind of an unease about what this presidency is going to bring to France, and certainly he has a lot to prove, and he has to win over even Parisians, who is his base support.
And joining me for more on how the markets have responded is WION's chief business correspondent, Sumit Chaturvedi. Sumit, obviously, Macron's victory has seen a positive trend emerging as far as Asian markets go. Do you feel that this is going to be sustained, or is this just some sort of buoyancy that's been brought about by the fact that Le Pen has been defeated?
Well, Aisha, last year's Brexit has actually spooked the overall global markets. So there was a time when everybody was thinking that Brexit will pave the way for Frexit and for Italian referendum and whatnot, and EU will disintegrate. So that was the biggest fear markets were actually having over the last few months. But now they have become stable. They have breathed a sigh of relief. Well, that's also visible in the way Asian markets have opened. Asian markets, most of them have opened in green. Sensex was up. In India, Sensex and Nifty were up. But in other Asian markets, Nikkei was up by good margin, good percentage. Straits Times of Singapore was up. Hang Seng of Hong Kong was also up. So clearly, they have heaved a sigh of relief. As far as the Frexit postponement is concerned, clearly the center candidate victory is going to give further support to all the emerging markets, especially across the globe. In fact, it will further strengthen the global forces. Over the last few weeks and few months, all corporations were actually thinking that, the world is moving towards a place where it will disintegrate into smaller markets. Now, this French election, now this result has given an optimism to all these emerging markets, and that's why all Asian markets have opened in green. We are yet to see what European market and US market will be kind of responding, but they are also expected to be in green.
All right. So we'll have to wait and watch, I guess, Sumit, to figure out how the markets do respond successively through the week. But on that note, thanks for joining us this morning.